Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to the P2 live forum today. We have good attendance, considering the holiday. So welcome. Small amount of housekeeping on my side. First off, you'll see a lot of neat photos from us in our marketing communication from Stephen Morocco's son, who has a new fancy camera, and this would be one of them. So a lot of fun working with really good pictures. Also, we now successfully have DigiKey all set up, and they've taken delivery of their first P2 stocking order, so we should see that on their website shortly. And then Mauser is coming up, and RS Components as well. I really hope this helps out the European customers of ours, but they're stocking everything, the whole P2 line, as well as some educational products that they needed. So that's coming. As you browse around our website, as you browse around on our website and you come across the clicks, in the description you will see that there are objects getting produced for them, and these have been from John so far. Thanks, John. And he's taking a little break, but he's going to be adding more. So I think around half of them have objects at the moment. And they're on our GitHub, of course. This is a current picture, unfortunately distorted by the way I just stretched it. Unfortunately, it looks bad, but we are building through the weekend 600, I believe, P2 edges and another 250 Johnny Macs. So yeah, our team just jumped right in. You know, we're in a back order situation. It's not something we want to be in because we want to get these off to people before Christmas season so they have something to do over the break. And it looks like we're going to make it. So this guy, Kenneth, who's our machinist, is running the pick and place with Terrell and just getting on top of this through Monday. So thanks to those guys. And other items, if you are not receiving our email, we have a P2 list. Actually, I maintain two lists of Parallax. One of them is just our really big customer email list, and then I have one specifically for the P2. And the P2 list goes out about once a week, and it includes links to this live forum and things that we're doing. So on our homepage now, if you scroll down, you'll start to see more P2 things that I capture that are going on out there, and I will make an announcement for them and post them here. A lot of times these are from forums, so I get information there, but please alert me to anything that's going on relative to the P2. Anything of interest to you, because it's likely of interest to others. For example, I was frustrated with all these cool animated GIFs Chip had buried in the Google document because it just wouldn't load. So, well, they're also available here now on our website. So people can go there and browse them and get inspired and then find all the links, because we're trying to move slowly some of the resource base from the forums towards the website, so people who are not using forums can find these things. But the more important thing I wanted to show you here is that I encourage you to receive our Propeller 2 email. So if you go to parallax.com and you click on Propeller 2, you will find a link to the Propeller newsletter. So join that list, and then you'll be greeted by us once a week. And that actually concludes the public service side of our announcements, and we are now open for anything of interest to anybody on this Wednesday morning, afternoon, evening. So anybody who wants to, yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, and Chip might have a few things to share today, I'm not sure. Thanks.
This is Mike again. I've got a question for Ray Cluso. Where are you at in terms of the OS and converting over the CPM stuff?
The CPM stuff is actually running. I haven't released the code, but CPM actually runs. I haven't done any real thorough testing, but MS Basic runs DIR and LS run. I haven't tried WordStar. I'm not familiar with WordStar, so I haven't tried it. But I don't really have the screen running to use that. I'm just using Eric's screen. He leaves the a command prompt in screen mode, so I just output to that. The OS runs. There's some problems with it, like a DIR doesn't work the second time round because I'm obviously corrupting some of the variables and things like that, but it does run. You can do a DIR, you can do an LS, you can copy files between CPM disks, which are actually just a file under FAT32, so backwards and forwards, that works. And there's a couple of other things that work on it. It requires a bit more work. It's using the full duplex FAT32 driver that Kai wrote, that I've converted to Spin 2, and it's got my driver in a separate cog that handles all the SD raw I/O. That all works. Again, I haven't released the source of that, but I could. I did release the SD drivers separately, but that's quite a while ago. Not that there's been any changes, but I could do that. So does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it would be nice to get a copy of your current version to beat on a little bit.
Yep, I can do that. If I haven't done it by next week, chase me up. I've just trying to ship some boards out today and tomorrow. So I'll try and get to that maybe over the weekend. Monday's always out for me. I work. So, but if I haven't done it by Tuesday night, give me a PM or ask on the forum to chase me up in case I forget.
Thanks a lot.
Chip, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm kind of just getting awake. You know, I do night shifts. So what are your plans with the spin interpreter and spin? I have to put my thumb on it. How far are you?
Well, what I've been working on lately is actually not a whole lot, kind of like in a refractory phase after all that debug stuff, but I've been going into the debug code, and there's something that happens there where I have, I make a copy of the first 100 hex longs, 256 longs. I write them to the debug memory, which is that top 16K. And then I use a semaphore lock to manage control of the serial port, right? But the trouble is all these, because you might have 8 cogs in debug interrupts all at once. So this image, it starts to eat up a lot of memory. It's like, what's 8 times 1K? 8K bytes. And there's even a little more. So it eats up half of the memory. So I realized, well, wait a minute, I could use the semaphore to not just gate use of the serial port, but I could use it to gate use of a single buffer space that everybody could use in turn, right? And then if I need to do a delay, which sometimes you want to do at the end of a debug, I could do that in the little tiny 16 instruction stub right before returning from the debug interrupt. So what I could do is I could return control to the next guy and then do a delay if it's needed and then back out. So when I get this thing working, it's going to free up like 7 kilobytes of, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to free up about 7K of that protected memory up top, and because I only have 1 buffer now, I can make it the full size of the cog. I could even make it contain the LUT too, but I'm just going to have it, store everything from 0 to F is stored automatically, but it's going to store everything from 010 to like OF or 010 to 1F9, right? So it'll cover pointer A and pointer B too. And I can leave the LUT. I don't need to mess with the LUT. But what this will enable me to do is like really enrich the debug program because, you know, I've been like in this cage now. I can't get the program any bigger because I'm at the limits of storage and how much is practical to do. So now I've just doubled the size. So I can have, like, in one app, I can have a really nice, you know, debug thing like we use for graphical debug, but also I can put all of the kind of like single stepping and breakpoint and everything we need to make a full debugger in there, and bidirectional serial, and I can even have more printing routines so that I don't have to you know, have everything stored verbosely for the debug memory, because Stephen Morocco's been running out of it. So now I'll have the facility, the room to have the facility to actually compress the debug data so I can decompress it at go time. And it's going to really open things up a lot. So once I get this change made, it's like smooth sailing all the way to a full debugger. And we're going to have more, you know, efficient memory use and more debug stuff possible. I mean, just the volume of debug stuff will increase a lot because there's going to be a lot more storage. So that's what I've been working on. And I got all the documentation up to date now for that Spin2 doc, everything. One thing I didn't have covered last week we met was the MIDI, but I got that in there. And I put in a whole section about calling PASM from Spin2. So I covered inline assembly in all its detail. I covered the call instruction, what happens when you do a call, what's available for you, and then also the reg load and reg exec, got those covered. So now some missing things that were kind of important that I didn't realize I'd missed are covered. So everything you need to know to work between Spin and PASM is in there now.
So finally, we can get you to work on your Spin interpreter again on the Spin compiler. Spin compiler.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something I want to do, but before, and I know you guys think my priorities are out of order, but before I do that, I really want to make this file system because that is important to having things work on a chip. That's something that we're missing that we need. But we don't need to debate about that unless you really want to.
Yeah, actually, we have two implementations now. The Team OS has kind of that file system in the Flash, which I like pretty much. And Eric has that file system for the PC kind of connected to the over the serial, also like you, with kind of an escape character. So you can use the host file system of the directory where your program is started from, sort of, which is pretty neat to use. And maybe you can kind of adapt one of, or even both of them. The file system on the host is already integrated in the P2 load program. You give it another parameter, and then it's basically using the serial terminal and the file system of the host. It's pretty neat to use, and I think it should be possible to kind of do that in Spin2 too. It's also like you did with the backtick. He has another escape character. I don't remember what now, but it's basically working like your debug thing, but it provides a host file system to the P2. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, file system support is the big missing thing. We've got keyboard and mouse covered and video, but not the storage. The storage is what sets everything free.
Yeah, the next question is running Spin out of external memory.
Well, let's see. Well, you know, the problem with that is that we'd have to cache it, I guess. We'd have to do some partial caching, but could be done. Does anyone have any update? There are some chips out there that are 8-pin SPI devices that are rather large SRAMs. I think they at least go to 2 megabyte. Does anyone know anything new about those? Those are kind of interesting. I mean, they could share the clock pin and maybe even the data pins.
As I said before, I got hooked up to your P1 with a PE kit and mParks Spinix or Spinx. So it was kind of self-hosted development on the P1. And that was kind of like, I don't know, after programming those big mainframes, it was like getting back in my childhood. The Earth 80 and, booting up and boom, it's there.
Yeah. No, that kind of thing is fun. And I think we've been away from that stuff for so long that if we had it again, we'd realize right away what's good about it. That's kind of where I want to go.
Another thing would be to build some P2 program to display your debug screens.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. We could cut the latency down to nothing almost. And that would be really important also for like a full-blown debugger, because the trouble is, well, Jeff is working on a threaded serial engine for the PC, but we have to cut the latency, the turnaround time down. On the chip, it's easy to do. You can immediately respond. It'd take more work to respond later than it would right away. But on a PC, you got to do a lot of work to be able to respond right away. But because see, if I use a semaphore to gate the use of the main memory buffer and the serial port, then talkback from the PC needs to happen faster. Otherwise, we hamstring everything, so we need faster serial to make it play right.
And that brings us to Peter's serial USB 3, whatever, USB chip, which would replace the FTDI for less cost and way more features, kind of watchdog and controllable reset, which is one of my problems I have with all your boards not having a jumper on reset. So when you kind of plug something in USB, Propeller resets. I'm not sure, but he said it's in there. I haven't got one yet, so I couldn't try.
I think the problem in this case is more on the PC side, not handling the serial efficiently, and so it's not able to go at the full speed of the USB device that's plugged in.
Well, you're talking about the resets that occur without when you plug and unplug things, right, Michael?
Yeah, actually it's unplugging, plugging, and even if you plug something else in your USB hub, it will re-enumerate the devices, and by that toggling DTR, and then the Propeller resets. The only right board you had was that Spinneret. There you had a jumper for programming or not programming, so kind of jumper between FTDE and the Propeller reset, so that you can't, that the Propeller wouldn't reset, basically.
Right.
And then it keeps running. But if you have kind of a production line and you plug in USB because you want to check some output, boom, it resets. So I cut traces currently on all the boards I buy. I don't do boards, I just kind of buy them from Parallax, and I basically need to cut traces to reset so they don't reset, and then I have to figure out how to put a jumper there. And I mean, it's not that much cost to add that to your.
No, it's not. It's not at all. I wish Michael Mulholland were on here because we could ask him. But I agree. Does anyone know, Roy, you might know, is this remediable by going into the device manager and setting up some configuration stuff for the USB so that it won't do this? It won't cause a reset?
Actually, Michael had some post about that, where you kind of go into that device and then change settings for that device. And but I mean, doing that on any production system is also not nice.
No, it's not.
I mean, easier would be just to have a fucking jumper there, and if you leave it there, you can use it like before. But if you plug it out, it's kind of reset protected, basically.
Yeah, the problem is if you change the device in Windows, then it will never do the reset, right? You can tell it not to do the DTR or whatever, right? Or not. You can tell it to do it or not, and then if you tell it not to do it, you'll never be able to reset, so you have to manually reset the program. It's better to just have the board be set up to him. Part of it is that the FTDI chip itself is firing the DTR signal when you disconnect USB. Because DTR means data terminal ready, and it's not ready anymore, so it's toggling it or something because of that. I'm pretty sure that's the case. If I understand correctly, Ray and Peter's solution is to add some circuitry to make it so that the reset happens more deterministically, like it requires the appropriate transition, or I don't even know exactly what their little simple transistor circuit does. Maybe Ray could explain the difference again, because I'm sure he's already explained it.
I can just butt in there. Peter's, he's replaced the whole UART with a CP21 or UB3, and it does smart resetting. On my boards, I always have a link to enable the transistor reset circuit. That's actually not, the original intention wasn't to disable reset, it was to enable you to either select the transistor reset circuit, which is on the prop plug, using a cheap serial device, USB serial device, or to go in and use a prop plug. But the upside of that is that you've also got a link on the board that disconnects the DTR pin. So
yeah, but it is a soldable link and not a.
It depends on which board. My P8X Blade 2 is a 50 thou link, which we sold a 50 thou pin header with a shunt on it. So in fact, I can't reach my board. But the mistake I made, because I was so pushed for space on my retroblade for the P2, I didn't have room to make it wide enough to take 50 thou, so it's a link. Then after I did all of that, then I widened the board and would have had space, didn't think to do it, and so I'm stuck. I've got a set of pinholes that won't take the 50 thou header, and it's only marginally different. Like, I don't know whether you can see, but the 2-pin header there is for flash. The 3-pin headers at beside it is a little link for the transistor reset circuit. But I guess if you use that to go to an external jumper, you could fudge it. But it wasn't intended that. When I redo the board, I need to expand the for the flash chip. I need to expand the pins slightly so that they take the WSON 8 chip, which is more readily available, but it's a QFN chip. I'm actually about going to try as soon as I get off this call this morning to see whether I can actually solder those QFNs by hand onto it. I've got the flash chips. I just don't know whether I'm going to be successful. There's hardly any meat left coming outside the chip. So does that answer the question?
Oh, so I didn't get it, but this is not a Gullwing. This is some kind of like QFN package or something?
Yeah, it's a WSON 8 package, which is a QFN. The pins do wrap around the corner, so I don't have the ground pad in the center, but that's not necessary for these chips. It's just that the chip is so wide, there's hardly any pad left. It's not going to cause any shorts or anything like that. It's just a matter of whether I can touch the iron onto that tiny corner.
Yeah, those are tricky to work with.
Yeah, you need a little bit of pad, and I have to manually solder them because they're on the underside of my board.
Oh.
And I don't physically have room to put it on the top side.
Hey, Stephen, how is your project going?
So you press the space bar on the wrong window and weird things happen on your machine. Actually quite well. I'm expecting to have a driver that for single boards that I can commit to the object exchange next week maybe. Scrolling text is working, basic graphics is working. Single board setup seems to be working pretty well. It supports different board types. And so now it's just get it committed. Me learning how to ship in times of COVID is kind of interesting. And so I'm working on trying to ship test facilities out. We're still trying to work on how to build the boards and make them available. And so that's coming up real soon. Working with Ken on that, but I'm excited. It's going well. For VS Code, I have the syntax highlighting stuff out there, separate project, and I just put up a new version today that fixes the problem we saw with highlighting. So, kind of fun. Overall, I'm happy with the progress, but it's been slower because I've been paying attention to PCB details and trying to get
Stephen, would you say realistically that in 3 weeks we might have the Hub 75 adapter boards? Or was it more like 4?
Probably closer to 4, but let's try for 3.
Yeah, from our discussion today, I think we could definitely do 4.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of setup to do, but
yeah, I'd love to. Going to be interesting getting that done. Chip, a question for you on the spin strings. Do you allow escape characters in the strings? Are they just backslashes?
Okay, now by string, do you mean something in the debug?
No, in just quoted strings. In quoted strings in the language, you use double quotes, right, for strings?
Yeah. Okay, so here's what happens. It only allows you to put, printable text characters in those, but what you can do is just end the quote, put a comma, put 27, whatever you got, and then start quotes up again. Because what the compiler does is it takes a string and it actually outputs it from the parser as value, comma, value, comma, value, comma, value. So if you break the quoted string and just put comma values and then start another quote to the innards of the compiler, it just looks like values separated by commas. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm actually more asking outside of the debug context, if you have backslash characters that get put inside of strings.
No, it doesn't. It'll treat backslash as an ASCII character.
Okay, good.
So you have to just put the ASCII values in decimal or hex or whatever, but separated by commas. Okay. And it's that way for like 0 strings. The only thing that ends a Z string is a 0. So right. You can have.
I was going to say, you have to be careful, Stephen. You don't put a 0 in the middle of your string because the compiler will, with most of the string processing functions, will just say, "Oh, that's the end."
Understood.
So, a lot of us have been writing string processors that have the ability to embed escape characters in. My new full duplex serial, I found somebody had done that. Sadly, I don't know who, so I don't know who to credit. But I took that and ran with it. So in my P2 full duplex serial, it'll do a lot of the kind of standard stuff that you have, escape stuff in Python and C and those languages.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking is because, John, your code specifically, you have lots of example code out there. And so when we run against your GAN code files, we found that you had quoted a backslash character. And my syntax highlighter was treating the backslash as a prefix for escape sequences. And so then that killed the syntax highlighting from there forward in the file. I pulled that back out again now in the latest version, and now it's quoting strings correctly. And so I just had to make sure in asking this question that I just shouldn't be processing those characters so I can quote strings properly.
Well, I reserve the right to be wrong. So if I was wrong, do I need to fix something in my code?
Negative, your code is fine. It's just that Spin doesn't support \, and I was treating it as if it does.
Oh, got it.
And so I fixed the syntax highlighter, and now your files look much better than they did before. So does that answer your question, Chip, about the matrix work?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm actually working, the next frontier for me is engineering the actual brightness control correctly. So the first driver will have basic colors and things like this, but fall off of brightness is very challenging, requires very long dead times to hit the LEDs. And so I'm working on a driver that actually makes that a little bit more efficient and requires less frames, so we can still do video frame rates at good grayscale.
I see.
So that's my next engineering. I'm probably doing actually light sensing to do actual light output measurements and then trimming the driver based on that. It's interesting.
Good. Sounds good.
Hey everyone, sorry I'm late.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
I'm here. Any questions about shipping to North America and Canada? Yep. I know Ray and I have been communicating, and Peter also. We should have them in the U.S. here pretty quickly.
I'm a little late into that game, but where I need to order them, should I use the PM to you or to Peter or to?
Yeah, all the purchases should go through Peter or Ray. They have their PayPal stuff on the threads. It's kind of hard to find them, but if you go to the first thread, they usually have them in there. Didn't mean to sidetrack.
Just for reference, all of mine's on the first post of the Retroblade thread. And I'm just in the middle of testing out all the IOs while I'm listening.
Good to know, because for the project I'm working on, the P2 eval is simply too big. I need a smaller board,
Would the edge suffice?
He needs a mini Mac.
Yeah,
Michael, you're muted.
I told you that it needs to fit in that head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael, did you look at the P2 Edge mini breakout board?
Yeah, I did, and maybe that might work. I should order one, yeah. That might probably fit, yeah.
And then remember, there's the El Cheapo really small version if you have a welding torch.
I'm not really good at welding, soldering. No, I started this, then my eyesight started failing me and my hands started to shake. So I'm not really good at soldering. I can do stuff with cars and welding torches, but small parts really challenging. I mean, really challenging for me.
Yeah, they never did COBALT and soldering before.
Yeah, Ray, Cluedo, did you try them COBALTs on your CPM or not? Because they didn't work on the P1 CPM, but they might work on your version on the P2 now. No headphones on. Cluedo, did you try the three? I have 3 COBALT compilers. I kind of put in your thread.
The COBALT compiler? No,
You didn't try it then?
I haven't tried it. I haven't got. I'm still busy trying to ship stuff, so no, I haven't tried it.
Because your current compiler is based on COBALT one, I think, and not on that what Peter did.
No, My P2 compiler is based on Pulmo's code and then reconverted.
Yeah.
The Ramblade, which is a P1, is based, well, it is Peter's Zycod emulation.
Yeah, and that one kind of fails on all three of them with kind of some mysterious opcode missing whatever message.
I'll tell you what you could do. Can you try, there's a program called ZEXALL, which is a test program. I haven't got that to run on P2. I tried a year ago when I was in the UK. But if that can run on the, because you've got a Ramblade, if you can try that on a Ramblade and tell me where it fails, I can fix the instruction that fails.
Okay. I mean, the Ramblade is giving me some debug info where it hangs, but I can't understand it.
Giving you some work?
All three compilers kind of seem to use an instruction which is not there or something. So the Ramblade gives me kind of a debug message.
Yeah.
Giving out some code, but I don't understand what it kind of meant to say to me.
If you post the code up on the Ramblade forum or the Zycod forum, I can take a look. But there were, Peter only implemented a subset of the extra Z80 instructions, whereas Pulmo implemented the lot, as far as I'm aware. Looked like it when I converted them all.
Yeah, I need one of your retro blades to try out the CPM there.
Well, I'm going through testing all the IOs at the moment. So I'm just verifying that all the prop pins. I found one prop out of the 21 that I've assembled had pins that were bent up, not flat, on one corner. And so about 5 or 6 pins hadn't soldered down. So I decided I'd better therefore check not only the shorts, which is what showed up the problem because it didn't have power, but what I realised, it wasn't actually checking to the end of the board. And while my boards are all bare boards tested, I didn't. I thought, oh, there's a possibility there. If the pin's not down, then it doesn't get to the edge. So on my first lot, I'm going through and I'm physically checking every I/O pin around the edge of the board, making sure it really does work. Well, I've just got through the first 7 and they're all okay. I'm just starting on the next batch.
Ray, are these Rev B, as in boy?
Most of them are Rev Bs. There's a few Rev Cs.
Okay.
The Rev Cs turned up in time, thanks, Ken.
Welcome. By the way, was that a packaging problem on our side that the pins were bent up?
We don't know. They came out of Peter's batch, and he's had a couple as well. We're not sure. He wasn't certain whether he may have done it inadvertently or whether they came that way. But if the chip's not properly located and seated in its little compartment, and then you put the carrier on top of it, it can squash and deform them. Well, we don't know the answer to that. There was the other thing that I sent you a PM about yesterday. There was a bit of contamination in the latest set.
Yeah, a lint or something. I'll get a look at those trays and see really exactly what's happening there.
Yeah, well, certainly I've assembled 7 of the Rev Cs, and certainly just then every one of them had been seated down correctly because I just finished the tests on them, so they're all good.
Well, you're a good first tester because you hold us to a high standard, so we'll get it right. You just might be guinea pig.
Yeah,
here.
well, if no one tells you can't fix it.
Right.
we learnt that many years ago with our own companies. I did notice I've just sent you, or I'm in the process of sending you a text, but you might look at, on the website, you've got a picture of the P2 chip, and it's an ES chip. Now you've got real ones. Get that updated with a real one, because some engineer's going to look at it and say, oh, you're conning us. You really don't have real chips.
Vaporware. Yeah, next week we're getting that photo. Thanks. I'll get it on the list now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, really good. The sooner we get rid of all these ES chips, ES branded chips, the better. Because some engineers think they don't realise what's fact and fiction. How are your boards going through testing, Ken?
Yeah, early results were very good. Everything's passing now.
Did you start making them yesterday or today?
Yesterday. Yeah, 500, and we're going to finish them Friday and Saturday, and then we're moving right into the Johnny Macs on Saturday. And it's going to be a little crazy because we have to stuff all of those, all except for one part. So they'll be all laid out all over the whole manufacturing area because it'll take up a lot of volume. And then the part that we're missing comes in on Monday.
There's always one of them, isn't there, Ken?
There's always one, and no matter what we do, I mean, you order things that are in stock and then they're gone the next day. And,
I know, it's a real nightmare. When we had, most people probably don't remember, but there was real shortages. Two particular times of production, one in the 80s, one in the 90s. And for love nor money, a garden variety chip that you could get from anywhere all of a sudden dried up. And you've got a board that uses, a 10-cent component, and it's no longer available on 3-year lead times. Because the moment things go into short supply, all the vultures come in and buy everything.
That's right.
And then hold everyone to ransom. And absolute nightmares.
Yeah, the parts we've had trouble with are these solder-bearing headers. So we've often used our pick and place to put headers on boards and send them through the reflow, but we're moving away from that universally because it always has involved specialty suppliers that I won't name that are on the East Coast that never can hold their promises and only sell direct. So good engineering ideas to use them, but we don't need that anymore since we have machines that can do the through hole.
Is that like the Samtec SMDs that you used to use on the Quick Start memory board?
Similar to that, that's a Selecto. That's a reflow of an SMT part. Yeah, exactly. But Samtec is okay though generally for us.
Yes, one of the engineering nightmare of trying to design a board and not use components that are difficult or might be difficult, and looking into your crystal ball and figuring that out, and then you get caught by something that totally comes out of left field that you didn't think about. And you can't afford to hold everything in stock for, a year's worth of supply or more. You've got to take there's got to be some risk in there, otherwise you've got to sell your boards for double the price.
Right. And another issue we have too with production is parts might have multiple uses on different boards. And so we could be planning a run of Johnny Macs, but those parts might also be used on a P2 eval board or a robot board or something. Suddenly they get stolen out from under us. We steal from ourselves. And this is actually kind of hard to guard against in an MRP system, in an ERP system. I mean, you can take what is yours. So usually now we end up issuing parts before we are doing the job, so they're really not available, even though they are available. Just dumb little tricks. You guys are having all the fun. I have the boring job.
Yeah, you need an MRP system that says they're allocated, but
that's
not
exactly
actually taken.
What we have. Yeah, and you can't do this without a really good ERP.
Yeah.
MRP.
Don't you just set up a virtual warehouse and move it into that warehouse and then pull it from that for the project?
You could do that, but that's even more difficult than the better way of just issuing them before you're doing the product build. So then they're not available.
When
They're
I
allocated.
wrote an MRP system for a company, Rex Aviation, that sold citations and aircraft parts for citations. And so when a customer would order something, it went into an allocated bin. And so if there was an aircraft on the ground, all the salespeople could see that there was something allocated going to someone, and then they could look it up and see whether they could steal it. Because and believe me, anyone with aircraft who's got a part on order and someone else has got an aircraft on ground, they all give it to the other person because they know the shoe could be on their foot next time.
Yeah.
So there was never any drama about it. The point was you need to be able to see it. You know, if someone would break a windscreen and there'd be one on its way to somewhere in Australia, and someone would all of a sudden need it, and they'd, oh yeah, it's on its way, it's there. Quick, grab it, redirect it. It costs a fortune when you have an aircraft on ground. Yeah.
Ken, you could always ask the forum members if they have a reel of a component that you need.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
So what are we waiting for Monday?
I have to look it up. Let me do a check.
I had some clipboards on order on the old website, and I have to see how I can put them over on the new website.
I just ate the $10 UPS cost. It was supposed to be free, but whatever. Parallax can have my $10.
That's because we can't figure out how to make it free again. We're too busy dealing with spam bots these days, so we had to configure that in fraud software. So as soon as you put a new website out there and it's WordPress, you're hammered instantly.
Yeah,
so,
spam bots and spiders and all the automation stuff. You have to add a bunch of crap just to block all that so your site doesn't get taken down.
Exactly. You know, it's like, okay, we're done, great, now we can improve it, but then it suddenly quits working and it's getting attacked and there are malicious logins going on.
Is that the Parallax website?
Yeah. If you ever see it coming to a crawl, that means it's getting attacked, but as of yesterday, we have software to address it.
Yeah, Michael and I are pretty good on keeping the forums clean.
Yeah, you guys do.
Try running a game server, Ken.
I can imagine.
With hundreds of thousands of players effectively DDoSing you, which you want because you want to be successful and you have to manage all that traffic. And then at the same time, disgruntled players and just people that want to screw with you because they don't like your game company doing all kinds of DDoS attacks and infiltration, hacks on your client to send invalid packets that look like valid ones, but with slightly different data to screw up your system. We on EverQuest, we had literally thousands of lines of code just for sanitizing incoming packets from the client so that they wouldn't garble our system with their bad data being sent to us. And then ISPs, one of the things that's really nice is if you're with a partner ISP that is hosting your stuff, you can report DDoSing to them, and they can instantiate some pretty hefty backbone blocks to DDoSes. So if you can identify that you're being DDoSed, they can usually stop it. You have to tell your ISP, hey, our IP is being attacked. Can you help us?
You had people who were kind of spoofing your own data format, right?
Yeah. So they would hack the client to change what packets are being sent or write their own custom client to just send garbage packets to us, trying to get our servers to process a packet and crash which we had some of that going on. A lot of our crashes in the first couple of years were hackers crashing our servers with bad packets. And we would just, this whack-a-mole, right? Oh, this area in the server needs hardening against hackers. So we add a bunch more code and same thing over and over again. But you have to be careful to differentiate between your actual players just being very demanding on your system because there's a lot of them versus, malicious. Sometimes they can look the same because, when your servers go down and they come back up, you get inundated with all the players trying to log in all at once. So you get a whole bunch of lost packets, right? Because you're getting hundreds of thousands of packets hammering your server and it's dropping a bunch of them because the nature of Ethernet, right? Even though we had multi-gigabit fiber connections per server cluster, they can still collide. I remember our company was one of the first companies to start using 10 gigabit cards in our server backend. We bought some of the first ones that were ever released, and our ISP added support for them just for us. EverQuest in the late 90s, early 2000s, when it first came out, it was the cause of massive ISP upgrades in San Diego to handle all the traffic. We literally funded the development of 2 data centers being expanded massively because of our traffic.
Because of a game, yeah. Wow.
Well, how many players would you guys have online simultaneously? Was it
so at peak? Our peak number ever was 118,000 players simultaneously online. The average was typically, during that high period, the average was typically in the 80 to 90K. And then for certain events, it would go up a little higher.
And how much data per player is moving every second?
Oh, it's several K per second being transmitted both to the server from the player. It's not quite as bad from the player to the server. You get 1 or 2K. Coming back the other way, it's as much as tens of K. And we spent massive amounts of time optimizing that and reducing that and doing compression and coalescing of data and whatnot to make it so that the traffic wasn't as high. Over about 2-year period that we were focusing on a lot of this stuff when I first started working there in 2000, 2001, we almost cut it down to 1/10 what it was at launch. At launch, it was super wasteful. It was like sending movement packets for things that weren't moving just over and over again. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And it's the same location and, sending full-size stuff and individual packets for everything instead of coalescing and compressing, which dramatically cut it down.
How do you aggregate all that player activity to formulate what you got to send back to everybody else, or do you not aggregate it all?
Oh no, it's proximity-based aggregation. So I have a proximity bubble around me of say a couple hundred meters, and everything that's within my proximity, I get updated about from the server. And different things have different proximity ranges. So other players, if they're in your group, then they have higher proximity range, so you'll see them farther out, and NPCs have a certain range, and non-important NPCs, so there's NPCs you don't interact with, like critters in the world, little bunnies running around and stuff like that. They have a pretty short proximity range, so that they don't waste.
Character, is that what that means?
Yeah, NPC, non-player character, and then PC player character, right? So player characters are real people world, and NPCs are all the simulated AI/behavior players, right? Critters and creatures and monsters and dragons and whatnot. A lot of the savings was on reducing how much NPC data got sent to the client. The original EverQuest was sending everything, and a lot of it the client never needs because it's only used by the server. So we, the first half of our savings was just reducing what we sent to the client at all. And then another big chunk of it was the rates at which we sent the data.
Would you bother to get down into the bit field level for?
Oh yeah, we had packets that were packed down to 3 bits for this thing and 10 bits for this thing, and everything was super packed. Because we're talking like, 1999, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
Network broadband was, I have 2 megabits, right? Not 50 or 100 or gigabit, right? So,